Hello and welcome to a special video. Today we will be doing some time traveling, going back over 4 years in time. But before I will explain to you what is awaiting you for today, there's one thing that I want to mention first, because it seems that we have a little bit of a renaissance what reproducing of through the ages content belongs. And Cogito 3 has decided to share and analyze some of his World Championship games. The World Championship is at the moment at stage 2. And he's a relatively new player, but I think he's already playing on a strong level. And I also think he explains his decisions very well in his videos. So if you want to see some more Through the Ages content, definitely check out his channel. I will put a link into the description of the video. Alright, so what will we be doing today? Today we'll be taking a look at a game that was played in the International Championship Season 12 over 4 years ago at the end of the year 2020. And the idea is to see how many things would I do differently today. How has maybe my play style evolved, and are there decisions that I maybe wouldn't do at all now, 4 years later, and maybe seeing how I maybe improved, hopefully, or maybe how my play style has changed. So I thought that could be an interesting thing. Before maybe the Intermezzo Championship season starts, and we will be taking a look at that. I thought it could be an interesting idea. I did a vote with my Patreon supporters, and that was the idea that they at the end voted for. And so now that will be interesting to see how I did play over 4 years ago. And that was my third season, I think, in the International Championship. I started in silver in season 9, was able to rank up immediately, then played in season 10 in gold, where I had the chance to actually play against Vlada, the designer of the game, which was a very special occasion. And at this season I only finished second, but thanks to being a very good second place, I still got promoted at the end, then played in platinum in season 11, and I was able to win my group. And now in season 12 it basically was the first time where I had some really strong opposition. As you can see, you maybe know those two opponents, Genghisip and DireNTropy. So that was a very special season for me, and it was also a special season for me because from that season is actually the first video on my channel. So I thought it was maybe an interesting time to take a look back. Basically the time where I started my channel, the time where I first really faced some very strong opposition. And so I already think I played in a very decent level back then, but let's see how many things I would do differently today. The opponents you maybe know: Genghisip managed to win the International Championship season 2 times. DireNTropy won the Intermezzo Championship season 1 time, and also plays, at the moment he only plays in the Transcontinental ladder, but they are on a very high level and managed to win it, I think, 2 or 3 times already. And I think Genghisip at this point was not that much known, because I think it was his first season in Master as well, same as for me. So we didn't really know I didn't really know what to expect from him. While DireNTropy, I think, was a little bit more known, because I think he had already a very nice placement in the clicker rating, and also had, I think, already shown some very good results in the Intermezzo Championship and also in the International Championship. So I think he was already known as a very strong opponent. Alright, so let's start with taking a look at the game, and first of all we also, as always, will take a look at the leaders and wonders. We have Marlene Dietrich, we have Chaplin, the Hollywood, so some culture synergy. There's also Gandhi, we have a little bit of lab synergy with Marie Curie, Einstein, Bill Gates. There's also Churchill, there's spaceflight, internet, and Empire State Building. We have 2 military action leaders in Age 2 with Napoleon and Catherine. We have Antoni Gaudi and Darwin as potential culture leaders, but no Shakespeare and Bach. We have Cook and Maria Theresa. There is the Ocean Liner Service, but no Suez Canal. There's the Harvard College is another very strong wonder. And then also Newton is a potentially very strong economical leader. Then in Age 1 we have 1 military action leader with Jan Žižka. There are some leaders that can help with the strength, like Nostradamus, Genghis Khan, also Barbarossa. There's Isabella as a solid leader, however there's no Suez Canal, so the colonization is maybe not that important. There's Columbus as a nice transitional leader. And Genghisip starts the game, and of course he goes for the Colossus. So Genghisip, if you don't know, is known for a very military heavy play style, and so he goes for the Colossus here, but to be honest, there are also not the greatest alternatives available for him, so it's probably just not a lot else what he can do here, but of course he's Genghisip, so he here goes for some military-oriented play immediately. Now it's my turn, and also I think for me there's not that much to think about. Of course I could maybe just go for Alex, but I think it's better to have the Engineering Genius, and then I should still get one of those leaders at my next turn, maybe either Stonehenge and Hanging Gardens as a wonder, and Alex I don't like too much. I think at this point, back then, I valued him a little bit more highly, but I still went for the Engineering Genius instead, which I think is probably the correct move. DireNTropy then goes for Alex and the Frugality. And Genghisip, now H1 will start, and Genghisip goes for Sun Tzu, goes for some military play, but of course with having the Colossus this just makes a lot of sense, and it's not like it was a big decision that he made here, it's just basically what a card row had offered to him, so I think he maybe already at this time maybe favored the military heavy play, but I think we can't draw the conclusion from this game, because yeah, that was just what the row has offered to him. Alright, for my second turn we already have maybe something interesting that I do here, because I will go for Moses, but not only will I go for Moses, I will elect him, build a mine, and actually go for the Hanging Gardens. So that is an interesting decision, and I think it's a decision that I would not do today, because I think the Stonehenge is just a very, very solid wonder. The additional science really makes it a lot easier to go for all the necessary things in H1. I think in general, you know, when you maybe watched my video about what leaders and wonders I use the most in the World Championship, you know that I really like it to have some additional science, either from the leaders or from the wonders in the early game, and so the Stonehenge I think I definitely would have gone for here. There's of course the argument that Genghisip is maybe going for a bit of military pressure with having Sun Tzu and the Colossus, so having the additional population from the Hanging Gardens together with Moses could definitely be helpful, so that's definitely an argument, but even with that I still think I would rather go for the Stonehenge, and that at least would also give me one happy face. Then I could maybe even just, instead of Moses, going for Ashoka, because I think Ashoka is generally the stronger leader, and maybe I can set myself up nicely to get some value out of him. However, with the maybe being a bit of military pressure, he would maybe also make me a little bit inflexible, so I think the decision between Moses and Ashoka is probably a little bit closer, and I think it could be fine to maybe just go for Stonehenge and Moses. It could also still be fine, I think, to go for Ashoka and Stonehenge, but I think with the Stonehenge being available, I wouldn't go for the Hanging Gardens, but I think at this time I didn't value the Stonehenge that much. I think I didn't really maybe I rated it slightly higher than the Hanging Gardens or something, but really not a lot higher. I think it was mostly even with the rise of Varsinias later on, when I had a little bit of a rivalry between him, that I started to value the Stonehenge even more, because he valued the Stonehenge a lot and it worked out quite nicely, and so I also started to go for the Stonehenge more, and it also often worked out nicely, and then I now value the Stonehenge quite highly, but back then I didn't, and so I went for the Hanging Gardens, as it is of course a somewhat nice combination with Moses. It might help with the military, so it is an understandable play, but nowadays I think I would just value the additional science from the Stonehenge too much. Then I did draw the Legion tactic and a colonization card. DireNTropy goes for Alex, builds a mine, and doesn't go for the Stonehenge, but as you can see there's a Michi Castle coming down the row, and with Genghisip having the Colossus, I think it makes sense to maybe just go for a Michi Castle as the first one, and with that be a lot safer for the military. Genghisip seeds, the development of politics is opened. As you can see, I will draw 2 events, the new deposits in the strategic territory. Genghisip will then take the first copy of Knights, get that one very cheaply, which is a bit dangerous with him having Sun Tzu and the Colossus. But I think at my turn, it probably was the correct decision to not pay a lot for the Knights. And then he also takes the Urban Growth. Now it's my turn. As you can see, I actually seed the new deposits into the deck, and I'm not really sure if that is the correct decision, to be honest. I think the idea is maybe, because as a little spoiler, I will this turn actually go for Isabella, which I also think is a questionable move. But of course with her I have some additional resource production, so maybe the new deposits being the deck could be nice. If I don't seed it now, I probably need to discard it, but I don't have a free population at the moment, so I might just get punished if a free Legion or a free warrior is revealed, and a free warrior might even be especially important with me having the Legion tactic and there maybe being some military pressure soon. And also with Genghisip having Sun Tzu, maybe I don't necessarily have an interest in letting the deck move faster. It could be better to maybe have some more time to be prepared for potential strength events. So I think I don't really agree with my former self here that I see that the new deposits. The event revealed is the development of civil life, so I at least don't get punished by development of religion or development of warfare. And with the development of civil life, I can at least use Moses 2 times immediately, 1 time even for 0 food. I can increase my population, which is of course interesting. The combination of Moses and the development of civil life will increase my population again once normally. And then, as I already said it, I will actually go for Isabella here, elect her, and then I think build my second lab to get a science production going. And I think it's probably not the correct choice here to go for Isabella. It's not completely bad. I get some resource production going immediately. That is helpful to maybe build up my civilization nicely. So that's not bad, but I have to pay 2 civil actions for her. Maybe I can get a bit more value out of Moses with getting even more population out. And also with Genghisip, having the Colossus with DireNTropy, maybe going for the Medici Castle now. I think it might be more important to leave myself open for some of the military leaders. Barbarossa could be very interesting with the Hanging Gardens and additional food from that. Jan Žižka, Nostradamus, all of those leaders could really help me a lot to maybe not be too vulnerable to potential military pushes. And I think I would prefer to rather leave myself open for that. For example, I could build my second lab now, and then maybe either just use all of my civil actions on my civilization, increase my population, use the engineering genius on the Hanging Gardens, or I could maybe think about grabbing the rich land as a relatively efficient card. So I think I would probably do something like this nowadays, but back then I went for Isabella. I think I'm not sure how much I valued her back then, but I mean, she is a fine leader. It's not bad to get the additional resources now, but I think it could be more important to leave myself open for one of the other leaders, and at least I built my second lab, which I think is good to get a science production going immediately. Of course, there's the argument that if I don't take her, DireNTropy with having Alex could maybe go for her immediately, which is definitely not bad for him, but it also removes from him the possibility to maybe go for potential strength leader. So that is of course an argument, and maybe he would indeed go for her because it's very nice to get a new leader very quickly. But even with that, I think I probably don't like it too much to pay 2 civil actions for her. I then reveal the Legion tactic, and as you can see, I will actually keep the strategic territory, which I also think I wouldn't do nowadays because Genghisip has the Colossus. I will draw a lot of cards. I think even with Isabella, I maybe shouldn't go for colonies. There's also no Suez Canal in the deck, so I'm not sure if I would like to go for cartography, especially with not having a lot of science available at the moment. So I think keeping the 2 colonization cards, which could be helpful in case maybe Genghisip goes for some strength quickly and I need to defend myself against an aggression. So I think I would just keep the 2 defense cards rather nowadays. DireNTropy will use Alex immediately instead of Isabella. He can now go for Genghis Khan, takes him in hand, takes the Medici Castle, also takes the Code of Laws, interestingly. Yeah, I think Genghis Khan might just be very helpful for him. I think he also even reveals the heavy cavalry tactic already this turn, allowing him to maybe build 2 warriors at the next turn and fulfill it already. The Code of Laws is maybe a tiny bit questionable because at the moment he's very low in science, but of course it can be a nice card to have in hand, and it's only can get it for only 1 civil action. So I think that might be fine, but he could have either maybe built a second lab, even though maybe it could be nice to stay flexible, or maybe even elected Genghis Khan already. Now it's Genghisip's turn. He sees the development of markets is opened. He will take some additional resource from that. Will develop the knights, I think probably with the development of civil life. Maybe planning to build a knight relatively soon. Takes the iron in hand with having spent some science into the knights. It will take some time until he has the science for the iron, and then builds 1 step of the Colossus and also takes Columbus in hand. Now it is my turn. I don't push, which I think is the correct decision. And as you can see, this turn I will actually go for irrigation. Also something that maybe I wouldn't do now, but I think there are definitely arguments that are in favor of going for the irrigation, because it can be nice to have a lot of population. Maybe it's even nicer than to make use out of the additional happy face from the Hanging Gardens, and with potentially some military play being on the horizon, it might be nice to have just a lot of population available. So I think it's understandable to go for the irrigation, but being only in 4 civil actions and being relatively low in science, it also has definitely some disadvantages, because I spent all of my civil actions to go for those 2 upgrades to irrigation. Now I don't have enough science for either swordsmen or knights. At the next turn the event deck might already be flipped. I can of course go for a Legion tactic, at least with just building warriors, but I think that could could be nice to have at least the option to maybe go for either knights or swordsmen directly. If I can go for knights directly, maybe there's even a chance to just go for the heavy cavalry tactic that DireNTropy just revealed. And I think while having a lot of population with the irrigation is nice on one hand, on the other hand I had Moses, I have the hanging gardens and the additional food, so I think even without the irrigation I have a very decent amount of population available, and maybe I shouldn't invest my science and civil actions into it, but it's a little bit of a playstyle question or thing here. I think I think it's fine to go for it. Maybe I wouldn't do it today, but I think you can go for an early irrigation. It works out nicely, and in a situation where there might be some military pressure soon, it definitely can have some advantages. So I think it is a somewhat fine decision, but with already having the hanging gardens, maybe I could rather save myself the science to go for something like knights or swordsmen at the next turn, and then maybe still having enough science to go for something like alchemy or iron soon. But I mean, it can definitely be fine to have now those irrigations going. Keep the strategic territory in the colonization card. The Dark Ages and the Crusades are revealed. And now it's DireNTropy's turn, and he will open the development of settlement, builds the second lab, increases population, goes for Genghis Khan as a leader, and then builds one warrior for now, which is enough to, I mean, even with not building the warrior, would have gotten a 3 additional culture, but it's enough to make sure that he isn't the weakest at my turn. And then the development of religion is revealed. I think we all have a free population for that. Genghisip will now finish the Colossus, goes for the St. Peter's Basilica, interestingly, already building one step. It's interesting because it is a very costly wonder, but it fixes his happy face, maybe allowing him to then put even more workers into the military. Now it is my turn, and now we can maybe see a little bit of the problem with having gone for the irrigation and maybe not just having increased my population, because now I could have, for example, gone for swordsmen, going for legion tactic directly with swordsmen. I could have also gone for knights, maybe setting myself up to copy the heavy cavalry tactic, and now it's a bit tricky because the event deck has already flipped. It could be nice to build up some strength now, but then I have to just build warriors, committing myself to the legion tactic, being definitely a bit military action inefficient, with maybe then planning to go for some swordsman upgrades later on. So here I think my instinct maybe was right when I took a look back at this game, that maybe spending the science into irrigation is not the way to go, but who knows, maybe the additional population will still prove to be very useful. But now it's a bit awkward not being able to just invest into military tech directly. The event deck has now flipped. I want to get stronger, but no, I can't now go for maybe knights and copy heavy cavalry tactic, or maybe start going for swordsmen directly. So what do I do with my civil actions? I will increase my population 2 times, that gets me out of corruption, and then I will indeed grab the swordsman, which is probably a necessary evil, because now I will also build those 2 warriors, making sure that I am the strongest instead of the weakest. I think that's what now that I don't have the science to go for the swordsman, I kinda have to do it. But it's a bit annoying, and if I commit to warriors, then of course I can't go for the heavy cavalry tactic, and if I don't take the swordsman, who knows when the next copy of swordsman is available, who knows how much strength Genghisip will very quickly be able to master. So I think I need to take the swordsman, even though it's a bit annoying, especially because I'm very inefficient with my military actions if I now start upgrading those warriors. So with going for the irrigation, I now put myself a bit into a tricky spot, but yeah, maybe the additional food will still prove to be quite useful. I keep the colonization card in the Dark Ages. DireNTropy will just do a revolution to monarchy, which is interesting, especially because it costs him corruption, but he has now the 3rd military action, which might help him a lot to defend against Genghisip, and yeah, it makes also sure to be the strongest with building a warrior, and now also has, with being on low science, had a chance to get into the monarchy. Now it's Genghisip's turn. He will reveal the medieval army tactic, which is not that great because I will be fighting now with an unimproved legion tactic against an improved medieval army tactic and against a heavy cavalry tactic. And of course, DireNTropy with having Genghis Khan can also copy the improved medieval army tactic at some point. So that's a bit of a problem, and Genghisip will now just go for Columbus, probably because of hand space issues. He could have also kept Sun Tzu for longer, but maybe also has a colony in hand that he wants to use immediately at the next turn, and he goes for the iron, maybe with the chance of going for some upgrades already at the next turn. This turn I wanted to make sure probably that I won't be the weakest. Genghisip had Colossus, Sun Tzu, so if he has drawn some strength events, he definitely would have pushed them. Of course, I could have, for example, also gone for an iron upgrade, but then I would again be missing the science for 2 more turns to go for the swordsman. I think that would be way too dangerous, so I think here I agree with my former self that I need to go for the swordsman here, but it's definitely not ideal, being now forced on this Legion tactic. I could have also still gone for the knights, but it takes a lot of military actions to copy to the medieval army tactic. Maybe it could be an idea, but it would also mean that I don't have the chance to make sure that I'm not the weakest now, because with going for the swordsman I can build one, I can upgrade one, leaving myself just with enough resources, not just with enough, but I have even 2 spare ones with the engineering genius to finish the hanging gardens at the next turn. And then I have 3 civil actions left. I will take the iron and I will build 1 step of the hanging gardens. Taking the iron here I think is a bit questionable, spending 2 civil actions to take it when I know that for 2 more turns, unless there's help from the developments, but the knowledge of the ancients at the moment wouldn't give me enough science because I have not finished my wonder yet, so basically only the scientific breakthrough could allow me to go for the iron already the next turn. And with that, it's the question if I really should invest 2 civil actions into taking the iron when I maybe could also just wait for coal and just be focused on defending myself and setting myself up maybe in different areas. It's maybe understandable because if I don't take it, DireNTropy can go for 2 upgrades immediately, and if you remember, I seeded the new deposits into the deck, and of course that is not ideal with DireNTropy having the Magic Castle. If he now goes for the iron, gets the new deposits, can then finish that a lot easier than maybe otherwise. So I think it's understandable. I'm not sure if I would do it today, but with the new deposits in the deck, there's definitely an argument, and maybe in 2 turns I can start going for the iron, but then I will also be very, very low in science, which is a bit problematic. So either just maybe increasing my population, building another step on the hanging gardens could be fine, just playing my actions efficiently, maybe even just taking the cultural heritage, as every bit of science could maybe prove to be very useful, but probably just spending my civil actions efficiently could be an interesting alternative. But I can understand why I wanted to take the iron. First of all, it can still be nice to have the option to go for it, and with the new deposits it could be annoying if now DireNTropy, who maybe doesn't necessarily need to, he could, he couldn't go for the cultural heritage if I let it stay on 2, so it's also a bit dangerous for him to commit 5 science into the iron. Maybe he wouldn't do it, but he could do it, and then he could get rewarded by the new deposits. Then DireNTropy will increase his population, takes 2 yellow cards, builds 1 step of the Magic Castle to get out of corruption, and also takes the theology, maybe allowing him to put an additional worker into the military. Staying at 7 strength for now, so not committing to a warrior yet, meaning no culture scored by Genghis Khan, but he would have been the weakest after his turn anyway, so he couldn't that easily have prevented to not win the foray, so that's of course a good event for me now, being part of that, while maybe in DireNTropy relatively soon with finishing the Magic Castle is a nice way to then make sure to be stronger than me again. So that's a good event for me. Genghisip will seed it, so he didn't use Columbus yet, but I think it's a good decision. You definitely want to try to hit the jackpot with the Colossus if you have it, and then he will go up to 10 strength, making sure that he remains the strongest, which is a little bit of a sign, and that there might be some other strength events coming in, maybe with me fearing that DireNTropy relatively soon has maybe the chance, also with going for Swordsman, to overtake me in strength again. I push the Dark Ages here, I have very low science and science production. If I indeed go for the iron, maybe I can just avoid losing any science to it, so I think that is probably a fine decision, even though I don't like it that I'm that low in science. Then the Reign of Terror is revealed, meaning that DireNTropy did get punished by the strength events quite heavily. This turn I will finish the Hanging Gardens, which of course is something that I really want to do, and then I will just increase my population 2 times, and as you can see I will upgrade 2 warriors to swordsmen. That is of course nice to maybe spend a military action now in H1 before I will lose, so that I don't miss out on any H2 draws. On the other hand, I could have also not gone for an upgrade and rather build 1 swordsman instead, making sure that I'm actually the strongest. But I can't push it the next turn. I don't know if there are strength events coming, even though it is quite likely with Genghisip having had Sun Tzu. Maybe I could prevent him from seeding, but he has Columbus. Maybe he will use Columbus ability anyway, so I guess it's fine, because if I spend 2 more resources to go for building a swordsman instead of upgrading 1, I'm missing 1 resource to go for 2 iron upgrades, and with the new deposits coming, that could maybe result on missing out on a little bit of economical value, so I guess it is maybe fine to just go for those upgrades for now. And yeah, I think this turn is probably fine. Of course, I could have gone for the alchemy, but I have not a lot of civil actions. I should be civil actions efficient, so I think it is better to work with what I have in hand now, even though don't really like it that I will be on very low science in the near future. So I think that's definitely something that has changed a bit my playstyle. As you saw in my Leaders and Wonders video, I really valued a lot to have just any science income from somewhere else, because now if I go for iron at the next turn, it will be extremely low in science. Without science, it is difficult to get more civil actions because monarchy, code of laws, or then H2 government forms cost some science. So now I maybe can only realistically get into government form with a revolution, and that is just makes me inflexible with the low civil actions. I don't think that is a situation that you want to be in, and that is the reason why nowadays I really like it to have some science income from somewhere. But let's see how that game will turn out. Maybe I will find a way to manage my situation. Now it's DireNTropy's turn. He seeds, and there's another strength event revealed, so he again gets punished the uncertain border. So with that, of course, it would have been very nice to build a swordsman, but of course I couldn't know that DireNTropy will see it, and Genghisip might have just used Columbus. So I think, even though of course now in hindsight it would have been better to go for building a swordsman, I think it was also understandable to just go for those upgrades. DireNTropy will also go for some upgrades, going up to 10 strength, but just not being enough to overtake me and Genghisip. But at the next turn, with the Engineering Genius, he can finish the Magic Castle. With the Urban Growth and the Theology, he has a solution for his uprising issues that he will have, so then he might be able to finally get stronger again. Now H2 starts. Genghisip doesn't use Columbus, but also doesn't seed, interestingly, so maybe he didn't draw a lot of interesting stuff with the Colossus. He will now go for one upgrade to Alchemy, getting a bit of science production going, but then for one upgrade of Iron, but that allows him to maybe finish the St. Peter's Basilica at the next turn. Now it is my turn, and at this turn I will go for the Iron. Of course, you can see there's a coal in the row. So going for coal instead of the iron is often a good idea, but I think here I actually agree with myself from more than 4 years ago. I mean, it definitely could still work out to go for the coal, but I'm very low in civil actions, meaning I think it is quite important to be civil action efficient. Now, not being able to develop the coal, just taking it in hand and maybe increasing my population and taking a card like Richland or something, and then only the next turn being able to go for coal, I think that is quite costly for me, with only being on 4 civil actions, and also the 2 additional signs are quite costly for me to handle. So I think it is maybe quite beneficial to go for the iron immediately, especially because the new deposits might be revealed very soon, meaning that I could actually get rewarded for getting the resource production going quickly now. So even though I leave the coal available for DireNTropy, I think it is probably a good decision to go for the iron immediately. And after going for 2 upgrades, I could have also gone for 1 upgrade less, building a swordsman, but I know that one of those 2 events is the new deposits, and I think some bad strength events are out already, so I think I can allow myself the luxury to maybe not get stronger in the situation, rather prepare myself for the new deposits as good as possible. And then I go for an interesting last pick with my last civil action, but I think it's actually a good idea, and that is taking the monarchy. Of course, it's very late, I'm very low in science, but at the next turn, I think I have a nice opportunity to just do a revolution and then get into a government for very cheaply. Of course, it's not ideal. I'm still only on 5 civil actions after that, but I'm on 3 military actions, which in case Genghisip goes for a bit more military, which he can maybe soon do with the additional happy faces from the St. Peter's Basilica, I can maybe more easily defend myself. I will get more draws in, and I just easier to do some stuff with 5 civil actions. And there are some interesting wonders. The Ocean Liner Service, the Harvard College, with being on 5 civil actions, it might be a bit easier to take those. And then I use now my time to get into a government form so that I can concentrate myself on other stuff later on. So I think that is actually a nice idea, even though it is of course an unorthodox move to just go for a very, very late monarchy revolution. But I think I can't stay on despotism for longer, so I think it's actually a nice turn and a nice idea by myself, if I can say it like this, to go for the 2 iron upgrades and then take the monarchy in hand, even though the situation is definitely still not ideal, but I think it is maybe a way to somehow get out of the mess with being on the low science. I will draw 2 cards, a colonization cards, which could be nice to have, and also the economic progress. DireNTropy seeds, now I would be the weakest, but I'm a bit lucky with the card draw order here, being part of the fray, and now the new deposits being revealed after I've just upgraded my resource production. DireNTropy this turn will get stronger with finishing the Magic Castle. He doesn't use the Engineering Genius, maybe because or probably because it would cause corruption, and there are some interesting wonders where you can maybe spend it later on. Interestingly, he's also not using the Urban Growth. It's an interesting decision because that he could have used without having corruption issues. So an interesting decision, yeah, maybe it has something to do with future corruption, but yeah, I'm not sure what the reason behind this might be. And then he actually goes for the cartography, interestingly, meaning that maybe a seat at a colony. It's an interesting choice. There's no Suez Canal. He doesn't have a lot of science. He misses out on the coal for that. I mean, the coal is also quite an expensive thing for him to invest into, so maybe it's actually fine to not take it now, but yeah, it's interesting to go for the cartography. Maybe it either expected some colonies from Genghisip to be seeded or just seeded a colony himself, and with that maybe will be able to win it, which of course can potentially give him a nice boost, but he misses out on the coal and it's a big science investment, so let's see how that will work out for him. Genghisip, as you can see, has now found a target for Columbus, and it is actually the strategic territory too, putting himself at 14 strength, giving him a lot of draws, meaning he is now likely to maybe have drawn a war, an aggression or some stuff like this, and is now definitely looking a bit threatening again, because he will now finish the St. Peter's Basilica. He has now a lot of resource thanks to the new deposits, and now he can increase his population, build an additional warrior, and out of the sudden he is at 18 strength, and also goes for one more upgrade to his alchemies, meaning in 2 turns he has enough science to go for a government form peacefully. So I think at this point Genghisip's position might be the best. He has nice science and resource production. Soon he, hopefully, unless he gets unlucky, will be able to go for more civil and military actions with going for a government form, and also he is the one who is putting some pressure on the other players with the military. Also, he lets the ocean liner service stay in the 3 civil action area for me. I could have taken it, but I have irrigation. At the moment, my population is not my biggest issue, and of course the ocean liner service is still strong, even when you are on irrigation already. But I think in a situation with that many low civil actions, I need to focus on improving those things where I'm really bad at, and even though I leave the ocean liner service now to my opponents, maybe at least DireNTropy will take it, who has the engineering genius but not the most resource production, so maybe it is fine to let him have it, and I think it is maybe not bad to just go for the monarchy. I'm putting myself at 3 military actions, having more civil actions to work with at the future turns. Of course I miss out on some stuff. I could have also taken the cannons here, but I think it would be quite dangerous to stay on despotism for longer, and after having done the revolution I can actually build 2 more swordsmen, getting myself out of corruption and making sure that I'm not the weakest. Also, I'm definitely not in danger of an aggression now, so I think that turn is also looking quite nice. I still have a lot of issues. I'm very low in science, but maybe I have the chance to probably not get the ocean liner service, but maybe the Harvard College or maybe even the Kremlin could be interesting. And then, no, but I can't really invest into any technology in the next few turns, so that's definitely quite a bit of a problem. And that's a type of situation that I think I am nowadays not maneuvering myself into any longer, or only very rarely that I'm in such a situation, but such a situation can still recover if I now maybe find the right things to invest into. The ideal thing would probably be the Harvard College. Then DireNTropy seeds, the reds are revealed, so that one hits me quite a bit. At least I have already fine amount of population, but yeah, losing 8 food of course is still quite bad for me. DireNTropy will go for the ocean liner service, just takes the cannons and the breakthrough. I think that turn looks just like it. Makes a lot of sense. It's just enough resource to finish the ocean liner service the next turn, and then the breakthrough. The cannons are just 2 very nice cards to get for 1 civil action. Genghisip seeds now, and the vast territory is revealed. Maybe a reason why DireNTropy went for the cartography. But as you can see, I'm actually able to win it. I got a bit lucky with drawing a colonization card from H2 very early, and with that I can actually bid a lot for this. And as you can see, I bid only 1 swordsman but paid 6 resources from Isabella, which looks maybe a bit expensive, but I think it's the right decision in here because I have a lot of resource lying around anyway, and I want to invest them into something. And now I have the opportunity to invest them in 3 additional yellow tokens, which I think is still a fine deal. I have just enough food, even after getting hit by the reds, thanks to the 3 food from the vast territory, to increase my population, meaning I can rebuild the swordsman, hopefully making myself still somewhat safe. But I have to be careful, because Genghisip, as you can see, will go for Napoleon now. This, in some regards, a very typical Genghisip game that we could maybe also see from him today, probably a bit more fine-tuned and more efficient than back then, because he probably also improved his playstyle, but it looks a little bit familiar in which direction this is going. No, but I think it was the right decision to bid that much, winning that for just 1 unit, and then investing some of my resources. I want to invest those anyway, I think is a good call. There's no Harvard College coming down the road at the moment, so I might just not find anything to invest into, and additional yellow tokens might just be very helpful for me. But now back to Genghisip. He will go for Napoleon, putting himself at 22 strength, which is quite dangerous, to be honest. And then he will go for the Conmon, meaning that at the next turn he has enough science to develop it peacefully. However, there are actually the Dark Ages in the deck, which I think is the reason why I wanted to seed here, even though I'm the weakest. I think it's an understandable reason, because there are only 3 H1 events left, and delaying the government form from Genghisip by 1 more turn, I think could be very nice. So I was probably hoping to hit the Dark Ages here. Sadly, I do hit the Strength event, a Call to Arms, but as you can see, I can actually draw 2 wars with it, meaning that at least Genghisip won't have those wars available, making it maybe less likely that I will get hit by a big war or something. So maybe that has at least some good things. And also I think this turn I maybe couldn't have used my civil actions in the most efficient way anyway. So you can see I can increase my population, I can go for an iron upgrade, and then I don't necessarily need any of those cards anyway. The journalisms could maybe be interesting, but I will now rebuild the swordsman, and then I don't have a lot of free population, and there might still be more military pressure coming with Genghisip having gone for Napoleon, so I think it would be quite dangerous, and rather going for scientific method at some point might be the better choice. So the cavalryman is probably a technology that I really want to have, but apart from that, maybe it could be fine to just go for an upgrade, taking the cavalryman now, maybe missing out on the frugality. So I think losing the civil actions is of course still a bit bad, but not really bad as maybe in some other situations. And as you can see, I will rebuild the swordsman, but interestingly I won't go for an iron upgrade. Instead I will go for the frugality. Just maybe also fine. The additional population might be very helpful to maybe being able to build an additional unit at some point, but I think it probably could have been also fine to just go for the upgrade here. Then I will draw 2 cards, and I draw another war, meaning there's only 1 left for Genghisip, and I draw the classic army tactic, which is a bit of a lucky draw, because now I have everything that I need to hopefully in the near future be able to defend myself if needed, even though investing 6 science into the cavalryman before I increase my science production could be quite costly, but maybe the Harvard College could still be a way to help me in that regard. DireNTropy seeds, which I was happy to see, because that means that the Dark Ages are revealed now, and Genghisip will lose 4 science, meaning that he can't go for the Conmon at the next turn, which I think is very nice. So the Dark Ages worked out quite nicely here for me. DireNTropy this turn will just finish the Ocean Liner service, gets more population from now on, but he will take it at the cost of not taking the coal, interestingly. The 1 civil action that he lost to the Call to Arms will actually hurt him quite a bit. Could have now picked up the coal, of course. The question is, how quickly can he go into that anyway? But he could have gone into it at some point. It might be nice to still at least have the option, but maybe he's also eyeing Maria, and with Maria maybe he can get some additional resources from her and be fine with being on bronze mines. Also, he will reveal the Conquistadors tactic, getting 1 additional strength from a Genghis Khan. Genghisip will seed, opens the wealthy territory, another colony. This one, for this one I was not willing to bid, because it would cost me a legion tactic and I can't rebuild immediately, so I think that was the right decision. And then DireNTropy is able to win it, and I think the 6 additional resources are very helpful for him, definitely helping him to maybe transition into the real Conquistadors tactic or a different tactic, and just making up for missing out on any resource upgrade. Genghisip, after not being able to go for Colonial peacefully, just makes the decision to go for a revolution at this point. And I will actually see the popularization of science into the deck, which is an interesting move. I take the scientific method in hand this turn, so there's definitely the chance that I will get some additional culture out of it, and at the moment at least, it doesn't make a big difference anyway, so maybe it is fine. Let's see what the top event is. I think I didn't have knowledge about it. Maybe I wanted to seed it. Now that I'm not the weakest, just get some additional culture, and the potential to get more culture probably is fine, but not a must seed, I would say, but it's probably fine. So, now the question is what to do. Because now I am probably at this point have to also ask myself the question, which H2 leader do I want to go for? There are 3 in the row. Probably the 2 that are mainly interesting for me are being Anthony Gaudi and Maria Theresa, and the 1 being left in the deck, or maybe 2 could be fine, Catherine just being somewhat solid. But Newton, of course, could really jumpstart my science production very quickly. But of course, I don't know when he will be available. So at this turn, I back then made the decision to actually, after going for an iron upgrade, which is nice to get this upgrade in, I made a decision to go for scientific method, Anthony Gaudi, and the urban growth. And I think it's a fine decision. I now get a leader for 1 civil action for certain. At least Anthony Gaudi will save me 1 science when I go for the scientific method, and maybe another science when I at some point want to go for the organized religion, which might still happen, hopefully. And then he produces me a little bit of culture, and I have the chance to only take him for 1 civil action now. However, I think it could maybe be a more interesting decision to go for Maria Theresa here, because not only could she also provide me some nice value, I mean, it could be a bit annoying if I want to go for her now. I mean, I don't necessarily have to elect her yet. I could take her in hand. The next turn, go for the scientific method, elect her, get 1 science out of increasing my population, and then, thanks to the science from the scientific method, in 2 turns, I could then start using additional military resource to start building some cavalrymen for the classic army tactics. So I think that would be a very nice plan. And not only that, I also would take her away from DireNTropy, who has the ocean liner service. So I think Maria Theresa here might be interesting. There's 1 problem though, and that is that I now went for the upgrade, took scientific method, a card that I think it's definitely very nice to take. If I then take Maria Theresa instead of Anthony Gaudi, I have only 1 civil action left instead of 2, meaning I can't take the urban growth, and the cards that are available for 1 civil action are not that great to take, maybe. Probably I could just take the justice system, because maybe it could be fine to invest into it at some point, but I definitely need to go for scientific method and probably cavalryman first, and then there might still be a lot of other things that I maybe need to go for, maybe organized religion at some point. It could be nice to go for an H3 government form, so while the justice system maybe could be fine to have in hand, I think it's not really ideal in this situation, and the urban growth is definitely the more useful card, even though I have a lot of resource production and the economic progress is coming. It's just, it still could be useful to save the resources. So because of that is an argument for Anthony Gaudi, but I think Maria Theresa just offers me more and takes more away from DireNTropy. And with that, I think maybe I would just go for Maria Theresa, maybe even floating Mala, civil action, or maybe just missing out on 1 iron upgrade to take the urban growth, but I think I'm still relatively low on civil action, so I think getting the upgrade going now that I have the chance to do it is very important. And but I think Maria Theresa might be interesting here. Maybe also waiting for Newton could be fine, but I think it's maybe just taking Maria and getting a bit of help from her could be quite interesting. But also I think Maria Theresa at the beginning of my through the ages career, if you want to call it like this, I for some time didn't value her that highly. I think she for some time was regarded by me as 1 of the weaker H2 leaders, and it was maybe only a bit later. I think it was not a lot later, because I think in my first Intermezzo Championship Grandmaster seasons I had already some very strong Maria Theresa games. That was not that long after this season happened. I think after this season I then had my first Master season in the Intermezzo Championship, and then afterwards I had my first Grandmaster season, and I think then I already had some interesting Maria Theresa games, but I think at this point it might be that I just didn't value her that highly, underestimated maybe the amount of resources that she can generate, and maybe also because of that I at the end didn't take her. But with maybe me not being able to spend the last civil action nicely, that is definitely an argument to maybe just go for Anthony Gaudi, as I now get 3 additional resources, basically thanks to Anthony Gaudi being available for 1 civil action cheaper on the row. DireNTropy will go for the cavalryman, can make a transition into the tactic, goes for Maria Theresa, And then, interestingly, is building another swordsman, which is maybe a tiny bit questionable, because he now doesn't have enough to go for cavalryman, also doesn't elect Maria Theresa yet, which might be the right decision if he needs the strength from Genghis Khan to defend himself. Maybe he also needs the strength from Genghis, or the strength from the swordsman to defend himself, and he doesn't have a defense card. Maybe he doesn't want to take the risk of getting hit by an aggression, which of course might be very backbreaking. But it could be a bit annoying not being able to build a cavalryman at the next turn. Then he takes the urban growth. Genghisip lays an aggression against DireNTropy, the infiltrate, which is an interesting one. Where maybe DireNTropy could have even made the decision to just let it through, because he would lose Genghis Khan basically using one civil action only, and a little bit of strength, potentially maybe getting hit by a strength event, maybe even another aggression by me, but then he could have of course kept a card in hand, so maybe that could have even DireNTropy could have even considered letting it through, but maybe it's also fine to just defend against it, keeping the civil action, keeping maybe the option to keep Genghis Khan for one turn longer in case it is really necessary. So he makes the decision to defend. Genghisip will go for a relatively late Code of Laws. I think he probably gets the revolutionary idea, and then being on 7 civil actions can still be very beneficial compared to being on 6 in H3. Then he takes the Opera and the Engineering Genius. Now it is my turn, and do I see it? No, I'm the weakest, so I won't see it, and here I make the interesting decision to go for the Kremlin. Which I think is not a bad decision generally, because I have a lot of resources, the economic progress is coming, and being stuck on 5 civil actions during H3 could be quite problematic. It could backfire if I don't get the last copy of Organized Religion, but DireNTropy has already theologies, Genghisip has the St. Peter's Basilica, so it probably would be a hate draft if one of those players will take it. And with that, I think it's not a bad idea to go for the Kremlin. However, what is maybe a bad idea is to finish it immediately. It's not bad getting the additional civil and military action immediately, but I think now it has to be of the utmost importance to get the science production going as quickly as possible, because now I can maybe go for scientific method with Antoni Gaudi, and I still then at the next turn have enough science to go for cavalryman, and maybe in 2 turns I could then finish the Kremlin. I think that could still be very fine. But if I now finish the Kremlin, then I can't go for cavalryman and scientific method at the next turn, meaning I might still be a bit in danger. I can't defend against an aggression at the moment. I will get 3 more draws, so it's probably fine to just take the risk getting hit by an aggression. I don't think it would be the correct choice to build a cavalryman and delay my economy just to be completely safe from an aggression. So yeah, I think I should just go for 2 scientific method upgrades here, electing Antoni Gaudi, and then I think it could be fine to use the last 2 civil actions to take the Kremlin. Maybe it could also be fine to not take it, but after having gone for the scientific method, the Harvard College is maybe not as important any longer, and the Kremlin is probably the better wonder actually. So I think it could be a fine turn, just go for 2 scientific method upgrade, take the Kremlin, and then at the next turn maybe starting to build some cavalryman depending on how dangerous the situation is looking. Or maybe then finish the Kremlin and go for cavalryman and organized religion in 2 turns or something like this. But here I think I have to get my science production going. I can't delay it any longer, but during the game I did, going up to 6 civil and 4 military actions, which is also somewhat fine. But now I'm maybe also forcing myself to go for the organized religion a bit earlier than I normally would want to, with now already having the unhappy phase. So yeah, I think it doesn't look that great for me now to go for the Kremlin and finish it immediately, and I think it would have been rather very important to go for the scientific methods now and get the science production finally running. I think that would allow myself a lot more freedom. Of course, it's not bad to have this additional civil military actions immediately, but yeah, I think the science production would be the more important thing here. And then I will keep some cards in hand. I don't draw a defense card, so I might get punished. I could have already gotten punished by Genghisip if he would have gone for an aggression against me instead of against DireNTropy. Now DireNTropy seeds his last cards into the deck. The popularization of science is revealed, and of course with that card being the deck, it's even more important maybe to go for the science production. It's probably not a really big reason. But still, I could have now even had 4 additional culture when I would have gone for the scientific method, so I'm not sure why I went for the Kremlin immediately. Then DireNTropy will go for Maria Theresa, gets the science and a culture from her, copies to the medieval army tactic, at least staying at 15 strength, but he is somewhat vulnerable to an aggression. At least Genghisip won't get his Colossus draws in yet, unless DireNTropy will end the age, and he can't really defend himself. So I think maybe it could have been, of course, all of those cards that he takes are quite nice to take for him, but it is quite dangerous, I would say, now given Genghisip the Colossus draws and maybe there even being the chance to get hit by an H3 aggression, because an H2 aggression might be bad enough, so it's a difficult situation to be in probably. Maybe it could even be fine to not copy the medieval army tactic, keep the conquistadors, that might be the tactic that he wants to be in soon again. Anyway, actually it's the upgraded medieval army tactic, so then of course I think it makes a lot of sense to copy it. But yeah, ending the age could potentially be dangerous now. And now that we are at the end of the age, we can also take a look at the overview. DireNTropy, as you can see, has a bit of a culture lead. The one good thing that he is going is the ocean liner service, but apart from that, he has a bit of a rough economy. Maria Theresa might be really a big help for him, helping him with the resource and the science, both things that he is lacking at the moment. But he has the Michi Castle to defend himself, has a bit of a culture lead, so maybe he can hold his position, but he definitely has some issues. But sadly, my position also has some problems. I might be able to jumpstart my position now, being able to upgrade some science production soon, going maybe for cavalryman, and with the classic army maybe being somewhat safe, even though it definitely doesn't make me completely safe. And I'm also at 6 culture production now, so I think maybe I have the potential to catch up now, but I also still have some things to fix, and if I get disrupted, it could be quite bad. So I think the player that has probably the best position here is Genghisip, 7 civil, 5 military actions, and just having quite a nice economy and being the strength lead, maybe being able to get an aggression through now. But he has also one disadvantage, and that is that he missed out on a selective breeding, meaning that he is stuck on the current amount of population. If he doesn't get a quick mechanized agriculture going, that could also prove to be a problem for him. He will get some draws immediately. Will there be an aggression or a war now? No, only seeding, so neither I nor DireNTropy get punished for not being able to defend against aggression. I mean, DireNTropy could have maybe drawn a card to defend himself. Genghisip opens the autonomous territory, and as you can see, sadly is able to win it quite cheaply. Nowadays, maybe I would actually take the risk and just let him pay more, but it's a bit tricky. Maybe he doesn't want to send more than 1 unit, so I could easily get punished. But in such situations, I just think it's very bad if a player wins now the colony for very cheap. So sometimes I'm willing to bid more than I actually would be willing to send. Sometimes even an amount that would really leave myself very vulnerable, just to make the colony not too cheap to the opponent, but you have to be very, very careful with that, as it can backfire, so just passing in the situation is probably fine, not giving any information about my defense cards, probably giving the information that I don't have a lot of them, but still. Genghisip will at the end win the colony, sending a warrior on a colonization card, will take the additional science, interestingly, not the food, but it's interesting that he doesn't take the food. The science, of course, also being helpful for him, but I think especially with having missed out on the selective breeding, the food might have been nice. Oh, but I guess he doesn't really have enough blue tokens for it. Yeah, that might be the issue. He could have also only taken 3 food, and that, of course, doesn't help him at all. So then the science, of course, makes a lot of sense. He will now go for a copy of cannons. Transitions into the mobile artillery tactic, being at 22 strength, being somewhat threatening because, no, he just needs 1 more cannon and has a respectable amount of strength, and with 2 reserves he's at least able to get 1 more population out at the next turn. Now it is my turn. I'm not the weakest, so I think I will push. No, actually not. I'm not sure if I may be afraid of some specific events, or maybe I just don't want to push this, because the Independence Declaration could really hit me badly. The emigration, maybe I can fix my uprising issues this turn with increasing my population. Maybe don't necessarily want to be forced to build a happy face solution earlier than I want to, so I guess maybe the events are just not that great, because I think with not being the weakest, otherwise it could be fine to just push an event into the deck. But like this, I will not use my politics phase, and now finally I will go for the scientific method, and I think it is the right decision. Even though it will mean that with all of the things that I have to do, I won't get the first copy of Air Force, which is definitely bad, but I think it's just, I can't delay my economy even longer. That's a risk that I need to take in the situation. Hopefully DireNTropy will take it. That would mean that a player has it that maybe can't use it nicely in the near future anyway, and Genghisip hopefully maybe has to wait for the second copy a bit longer, maybe just misses out on it completely, even though with him being in front of me is the better chance to get a second copy, which is not ideal, but I think I can't delay the science production any longer. I have to go for it right now, go for 2 upgrades, being at 6 science production now, and then I can increase my population. I have to do it to not have an uprising issue. I will then take the organized religion, and well, as I don't have a lot else to do with my last civil action, I will also get the opera. Could have also increased my population again. I guess that also would have been a fine move, but it would cost me 1 food production with going into consumption a bit earlier. Now I will have actually I also was using the frugality with just enough food to increase my population another time. Now I have 1 spare food, maybe allowing myself to get another population after the next 2 ones out a bit quicker. So I guess it's fine to take the opera. There's Chaplain coming down the row, and maybe if the game turns out to be a bit more peaceful than it is looking now, could still be nice to have the option to go for opera. Also with Marlene Dietrich being in the game. I now draw a defense card, so finally I'm able to defend myself. The positional army tactic maybe could be interesting, but it requires a lot of science and some civil actions to take the necessary cards. DireNTropy this turn will increase his population, uses Maria Theresa again. He will take the air forces, which I think is good for me, but also for him, of course. And then he will build a cavalryman, is now 21 strength, not being in danger of an aggression any longer. Goes for an upgrade to fix his uprising issue, takes the patriotism, takes famine for now, but I guess this turn there just was not a lot that he could do about it. Then it's Genghisip's turn, and he will go for seeding. Event, a crime wave is revealed, costing me and DireNTropy 3 culture and a blue token, and Genghisip gets a bit lucky here maybe, sees an early mechanized agriculture, and I think that helps his position quite a bit. Now he is able to increase his population 2 times at the next turn, and then he has the necessary population to maybe go for a bit of a military push in H3, so I think that is quite dangerous now. Now it is my turn, and as you can see, I interestingly seed a National Pride into the deck. And that looks very questionable, because I very likely won't be able to win it, but I think it's understandable, or there are at least some reasons for it, because even when I don't win it, I got at least 2 culture for seeding it, so if the player wins it, only gets 3 culture more than me, while I gain 2 culture against the player who didn't win it. So you can still push this event even if you don't win it, in case you have an argument to push. And the argument to push here, I think, is probably to hit the economic progress. Not because it's really great for me in this situation, but because it's annoying for my opponents. Genghisip, of course, gets some nice stuff with the mechanized agriculture, but he has not a lot of blue tokens left, and only would get 2 resources at least. And so probably after his next turn the event might be better, and DireNTropy has at the moment famine issues, would only get 1 resources, would lose 4 culture, and with that I think it's maybe understandable that I was willing to push the National Pride, even though it's quite unlikely that I will be able to win it. Sadly, there is no economic progress revealed, instead a Cold War. Now I'm not one of the 2 strongest any longer, and sadly I won't be part of those additional 6 science, which is quite bad. I then use the frugality, I have enough food to increase my population again even another time, and yeah, this turn it is probably best to maybe start building up some military as I do it here. I didn't see the immigration earlier on, and so I can allow myself maybe to have still some unhappy workers. I have 1 free military action that I can use nicely, and at the next turn I can maybe go for organized religions, or in case I have the freedom, can maybe go for operas with Chaplain, start some culture production. I think it's fine to go for Chaplain here. Could maybe also be fine to leave myself open for the leaders like Marlene Dietrich, maybe even Gandhi in case stuff gets dangerous, but Genghisip could go for the strategy, could maybe war myself even with Gandhi, so getting a leader now for 1 civil action, and with the happy faces maybe being quite helpful from him, could be quite interesting, and also in case I should lose the Hanging Gardens to the Ravages of Time, the additional happy face from Chaplain might also be quite helpful. And then I think it's the correct decision for myself to take the revolutionary idea with the last 2 civil actions, and because I think just having even more science available is quite nice. Engineering, of course, could be an interesting technology, but without the revolutionary idea, I think I don't have the science to really support it. Maybe I could have taken it instead of Chaplain, but I think it's a nice move to take the revolutionary idea here, and then maybe being able to also go for something like military theory and still have enough science to go for all of the other stuff. So I think this turn looks quite nice. And then I will draw an impact of architecture and also 2 wars. DireNTropy seeds. Now the economic progress is still revealed. As you can see, Genghisip only gets 2 resources. He sadly gets a lot of food. So that's still a nice event for him. But for DireNTropy, it's quite annoying. I think the 1 resource for culture is probably not a trade that he wants to see. I gain at least 4 additional resources. And then DireNTropy will use the Oceanliner service, will switch to Einstein this turn, interestingly. Goes for 1 upgrade to computers, has just enough resource left to build 1 cavalryman, will have famine again, but has now set up a lot of strong science production, as the engineering also takes the multimedia, maybe making the game end a bit quicker, but also having something maybe to invest into at some point, taking it maybe also away from Genghisip, who could very easily invest peacefully into it instead of trying something with the military. So yeah, I think that makes sense. But of course, DireNTropy has an issue with being that low in science and resources. Of course, the science is quite nice now, but at least he has the patriotism in hand. Genghisip seeds, and now indeed the Ravages of Time are revealed, probably seeded by Genghisip, because DireNTropy will lose the Magic Castle, which could be quite impactful, because that maybe could have really made him quite a bit safer. Maybe if Genghisip goes for a war, he could have gone against me, but now with being that low in resources, I think that is not an event that he wants to see. But also for me, of course, losing the Hanging Gardens is not that great, and Genghisip only has to lose the Colossus, so it's probably best for him. He will now build a religion to have more happy face, get a bit more culture production going, builds a cannon, plays the reserves of food, and then gets out of corruption by building going up to 3 armies, being now at 41 strength after developing the strategy, having a lot of military actions, taking the patriotism, not having enough science to go for Air Force at the next turn, so maybe developing the strategy is a little bit questionable, but still being quite threatening, and yeah, the situation definitely looks dangerous. He had additional draws from the Colossus, will now get more draws, so if he has a war, then he might just be able to execute it very nicely. I see it, I think it's the impact of architecture, if I'm not mistaken, which is a bit... It's a bit risky to seed it, but maybe it will work out fine. At least I have those 2 labs, and maybe I wanted to see it, so I'm not sure what event I was hoping for. The National Bride is revealed, which will give DireNTropy some more culture now, and then I will develop the organized religion. One downside, of course, with the National Bride is that now the player wins it, which maybe I'm closer towards, but it was very close. DireNTropy had 49 culture before the event was revealed, so it was very close between him and Genghisip who would win it. I've lost the Hanging Gardens. I will this turn go for Chaplain after having developed the organized religion with Antoni Gaudi, and then I will build 1 religion and 1 cavalryman. I'm not sure though if it was then really... I guess I needed a happy face to build a cavalryman. Now I can reveal the classic army tactic, which sadly doesn't really make me safe from the aggression. Even 2 defense cards from age 3 wouldn't be enough to defend, so I might very likely get hit by an aggression or maybe even a war. I then take the reserves, which I think is a must take in the situation, allowing myself to at least threaten 2 more cavalrymen, but that is not really enough if Genghisip goes for a war. So I'm not safe from an aggression, I'm not safe from a war. Now the situation I think is looking quite dangerous. The biggest hope for me is probably that DireNTropy, with losing the Magic Castle now, also is vulnerable, and that maybe Genghisip could make the decision to go against him instead of against me with aggressions or wars. So I think it's very important that I still prepare myself as nice as I can. So I also take the satellites, and then I play the revolutionary idea, maybe just to be civil action sufficient. I think it could have been also an idea to also take the fundamentalism hand, and just allowing me to even threaten a little bit more strength. I think that's maybe more important than already playing the revolutionary idea. Then at the next turn I could go for the fundamentalism, while also being able to go for another classic army tactic, maybe making myself threatening enough that Genghisip will rather go for against DireNTropy with a war. Of course, it's only 3 strength more than the satellites, but I think if the situation should remain dangerous with the military, it could be a very nice option to have in hand, and I think I probably should have just taken it in hand here. Yeah, but apart from that, I think what I do here looks probably fine. Maybe I could have also just gone for an upgrade to organized religion. I'm not sure if I maybe then would have not be able to get out of corruption. Guess maybe then there would be 2 blue cubes lying around. So no, I think this turn looks fine, but the situation overall looks definitely dangerous. So we see here that while I somewhat got my position up and running, I just don't have a strong enough position after all of those issues that I had early in the game, and now I basically need to really hope that Genghisip doesn't have anything nice to do with his politics phase. And I will draw the shock troops tactic. Probably that will be too expensive to really make something work with it, but who knows, maybe it happens. The civil unrest is revealed. It's a lucky timing for me, because at the turn before I could have lost 8 culture to it, which maybe would have been already, I mean, wouldn't be game over, because there would still be the hope that Genghisip maybe goes against DireNTropy. Maybe he's then even more intensified to go against him, with him maybe being the bigger threat after I can lose 8 culture. But yeah, of course, it would have been quite bad to lose those 8 culture. DireNTropy builds 1 Air Force. It's now at 33 strength, but he had only 3 resources saved up. There's no resource yellow card in hand. Didn't have the chance to take any resource yellow cards, so he is definitely also quite vulnerable. He can maybe copy to the classic army tactic, but I'm not sure if that even gives him more strength. At the moment he has 4 out of those tactics that give him 12. So I guess copying the classic army would still be an improvement by +4. But he can't really do a lot more, maybe going for the military theory, so basically being able to maybe go threaten something like 42 or something. I'm not sure what can I threaten. I can go for +1743, so we threaten a relatively similar amount, with DireNTropy having more culture. Maybe if Genghisip plans to go for a war, he might go against DireNTropy, but I mean, he can't go for air forces, so maybe he can't go for strong enough war to be really safe, but probably he could if he wanted to. But it seems like he has other plans, and sadly he goes for a raid against me, which I can't defend, and which is very, very hurtful, and that puts me now in a really bad position, I think, especially with the impact of architecture that I've just seeded. Puts me at 0 science production, and Genghisip will gain 8 additional resources out of it, and my position is now definitely looking quite dangerous. Genghisip interestingly takes Marie Curie for 3 civil actions. There would have been Churchill available for 1, Marlene for 2, but no, Marie Curie might still have some potential, and he is actually willing, even though it's quite late, to still go for an oil. I think it's of course not bad to have oil with Marie Curie, but it's relatively late. I think there probably has to be another reason involved. Something maybe like impact of industry, or maybe also impact of balance, because he will also build an additional lab and has now quite a nice balance going on, and with that, maybe that could also be a reason why he went for Marie Curie for 3 here. Now it's my turn. The impacts that I have in hand are not really that nice for me, and so I make the decision to first of all make myself safe for the military. I take the urban growth, or actually, no, I could have now played the reserves to, of course, build another cavalryman, but as you can see, with 29 strength and the 1 defense card, I have actually already enough to defend myself. Now that Genghisip got a little bit weaker after losing Napoleon. And after building this 1 cavalryman with my 6 civil actions, when I took a look at his turn, I thought, maybe just taking all of those 3 cards, and that is also what I did here, because yeah, military buildup gives me a lot of potential resource for the military. Revolutionary idea might be helpful to get some technology still going, even though I'm on 0 production now, and the urban growth just helps me out a bit. Can't really rebuild those labs now, and the cards in 1 civil action are probably no cards that I really need. The shock troops tactic I think is just too expensive to make work, and I should rather go for more classic armies, maybe hoping to still get air forces. And with the military buildup, at least I might be somewhat safe for the military, especially if the air forces are not revealed. Genghisip so didn't really set himself up for air forces, maybe showing that he doesn't necessarily have the plan to even go for a war, which maybe at this point could be a big hope for me, that maybe he goes for a war against DireNTropy, and with DireNTropy maybe not being able to defend himself that nicely, but now he can maybe take a copy of reserves, DireNTropy, and with that maybe set himself up nicely enough, maybe going for another classic army tactic. First of all, we'll go for 1 upgrade to selective breeding, finally not having famine any longer, takes the reserves, builds 1 swordsman, builds 1 religion for free, and then takes an efficient upgrade that he can either use to go for 1 more farm upgrade, or maybe for 1 more upgrade for free to the theology. Now we are relatively close before the end. The culture is still relatively close. I'm behind, and no, it's not looking good, but it's still close, so I can still hope for some things to happen. Genghisip seeds and opens the impact of science, and that is of course quite bad. So maybe Genghisip even seeded this impact of science maybe relatively early. Maybe it's now revealed quite early. Maybe that was also a reason why I went for the oil. Maybe that was could have been the reason. Or maybe DireNTropy seeded, because one of those events was seeded by DireNTropy, the other one by Genghisip. Maybe that event could have been seeded by both, but with Genghisip being that hesitant to actually build the additional lab, I think it is quite likely that it actually was seeded by him. And he this turn just goes for more science production, goes for the multimedia, builds one, takes the revolutionary idea, has a lot of culture production, and next turn is probably his last one, so he didn't plan to go for any more wars. Maybe didn't draw some, because I think at this one turn where we both, I and DireNTropy, could only threaten a bit more than 40 strength, maybe it could have been an interesting idea for him to go for war, but he could also set himself up peacefully very nicely. Maybe rather wanted to prepare for the impact of science and get some culture production going, which helps him against both opponents, while a war maybe would allow the opponent that doesn't get hit by a war to maybe somehow score enough culture to then win the game. So I think he played it very nicely here. It's my turn. I think I see the impact of population into the deck. The impact of competition is revealed. We can see that that one is actually better for DireNTropy, so maybe that was actually then the event that he seeded. And this turn I played a revolutionary idea. I'm now at 24 plus 0 science. That's also probably a rare sight. If you are in 0 science production, normally you don't have that much saved up, but of course with the raid that is something that can happen. And interestingly, the 24 science are just enough to go for democracy and the opera, and I think at this point that's what I have to do. It will very likely be my second last turn. DireNTropy, I mean, if he gets a military theory, maybe he could even go for a bit of a war, but I have the military build-up in hand, and I have to take some risks here anyway, so I think that should be the right decision, going up to 15 culture production, and then at least building one more cavalryman, putting myself at 40 strength, and then with 4 military actions, I mean, I have 13 resources. I have not enough to go for another army, but still it's maybe fine to use the military build-up now, being prepared for potential impact of strength that might be in there, and I have to take some risks anyway, so I think this turn should probably be fine. I draw the international tourism, no impact, but maybe there are also not that many impacts that are nice for me. And when I talked about Genghisip's retreat turn, I also said that maybe the impact of balance could be a reason, and we see the impact of balance here, giving Genghisip a nice amount of points against me and DireNTropy, and of course especially for me after this raid it is quite a bad event. DireNTropy will now increase his population, goes for Pro Sports, which is a cheap technology for Einstein, builds one, is now at 39 strength, being stronger than Genghisip, and then takes the reserves. And now the last turn will start. The culture is still close, but Genghisip is starting to get ahead, and I'm really falling behind, so it's not really looking that good at this point. Then Genghisip seeds and opens the impact of population. And then that one is at least somewhat nice for me. Sadly, it doesn't give me a lot of points against DireNTropy, which is probably the player that I have more hope to overtake. But at least it was a seedable impact for me. And Genghisip then builds a religion, goes for the democracy, and also interestingly builds an additional cannon. Maybe the impact of strength is in there. Definitely could be. And he's even going for another army. That's definitely a big sign that the impact of strength actually might be in there. The question is, can I actually do something about it? I can't go for another army, I can't develop any technology, I would have to destroy a lot of stuff, so I guess maybe I can't really play around it. I mean, I could build maybe 2 cavalrymen, 1 swordsman, but even that is not enough, so I think I actually can't overtake Genghisip, and DireNTropy can just get more strength if he wants to as well, relatively easily with the military theory, so sadly I think it is best to just ignore the potential impact of strength. I offer the international tourism to DireNTropy. We both gain 2 additional culture, and then I will destroy 2 mines, building an additional farm and also building an opera. I mean, now it depends a lot on which impacts I'm hoping for. Maybe the impact of agriculture could be something to hope for, but the problem is of course that DireNTropy can easily go for an upgrade here. Maybe I should have rather hoped for the impact of industry and not destroyed 1 more mine, but it also would only give me +1 against DireNTropy, so the impact that this farm has for the impact of agriculture is bigger than the 1 mine would have. Maybe I could have also expanded something. Now the DireNTropy has the chance to get easily stronger anyway. I think maybe it could have been more interesting to actually disband some military units instead of those mines, and then maybe build an opera and a farm, leaving myself with a better harmony, better impact of industry, and also being able to build all of those things. And with all of those defense cards, I'm not in danger of any aggression, because of course DireNTropy maybe would now have the option to disband something, but he can just copy the classic army tactic, go for military theory, so he can get stronger anyway. So unless the impact of strength is revealed at his turn, I probably I will be the weakest anyway, and then I think I probably, especially with the impact of competition being out, should have just disbanded some units instead of disbanding those mines. And then I just take some cards away from DireNTropy. Sadly, I can't deny him the military theory. He will see it. There's no impact of strength, and as you can see, there is the impact of harmony, so my former self immediately gets punished for a decision that I now maybe would have done differently. Yeah, that one sadly gives now plus 4 points to DireNTropy. DireNTropy will now go for the military theory, goes for one farm upgrade, copies to the classic army tactic, builds one bro spot, with that being the strongest, and then he ends his turn. And before the final impacts, we can see that we have Genghisip in the lead. He also should have very nice impact, so at this point he probably has good chances to win. DireNTropy is only 10 culture behind. Maybe he can pull something off. At least he has now the strongest, so maybe if the impact of strength indeed is in there, he could catch up some points. I'm quite behind, and my impacts are not that great, so at this point I think there's not that much hope left for me. But maybe there are some impacts that are not that great for DireNTropy, but in those impacts I think I'm also not that great any longer, because one impact would have been maybe the impact of industry. But with destroying those two mines, I really cost myself some points, not only for harmony but also for the industry, so I think I should have just disbanded some units. Then there's the impact of wonders, and that one at least lets me catch up 1 point to DireNTropy. There's the impact of architecture, which was seeded by me, which sadly is now not that great for me. DireNTropy actually gained 7 points against Genghisip, getting a bit closer to him. Again, there is the impact of strength. DireNTropy is again getting close, is only 4 points behind Genghisip. Will he maybe be able to pull off a small miracle and somehow overtake Genghisip? With the impacts, the last one is the impact of agriculture, and that one is then again a nice one for Genghisip. But it got relatively close between Genghisip and DireNTropy here, so at the end, I think probably a deserved victory by Genghisip. I think for a very long time the game had just a very nice position. A pressure that he made early on really forced some responses out of me and DireNTropy. We weren't able to develop that nice of a civilization and that nice of an economy. DireNTropy didn't manage to at any time upgrade his resource production. Got the help from Maria Theresa, which makes it maybe possible to play on low resource production, and I had some other issues, which also partly was my own fault that I had those issues. I went for the Hanging Gardens instead of the Stonehenge, and I mean, you just have seen in this game what happens when you don't have any additional science income and go with that into H2. And it's difficult to get more civil and military actions. I somehow managed with doing a revolution into monarchy. The additional population from the irrigation was also somewhat helpful, with at least being able to go for 2 legion tactics, and with that staying competitive and strength in H2. But my economy was then just too weak, and I in H3 just didn't have enough power to really defend myself while also building up something strong. Then the raid happened, and that was then of course quite a big setback. Now, so I think it was interesting to look back, and I think I actually had a lot of things that I mentioned that I maybe would have played differently. So I think we can see here that my playstyle definitely has changed in some regards, and that I probably have improved myself over the 4 years that I have played now. So back then I think there were a lot of things that I could have done differently, and I think the overall level of play maybe has also gotten better. Nowadays, with just a lot of players having gained a lot of experience, I think with my level of play back then, I'm not sure if I would be able to play in Masters nowadays. Maybe I would rather be on Gold level or something. I mean, it's not that easy for me to evaluate, as I don't watch a lot of Gold games, but no, I think there were a lot of things that I could have improved. And I also had some nice ideas. I think the late monarchy revolution, I think, was a nice idea, even though of course it also didn't lead into an a nice situation, and but yeah, I think there were a lot of stuff that I would have done differently. And yeah, so I hope that was a somewhat interesting thing for you to take a look back in time. And before we will end this video, I think we can maybe take a look at what happened back then in the international championship season. What was the result at the end? And we can maybe also take a look quickly at the other leagues, because back then Payada did some overviews over the season, so it's possible to take very quickly a look at also the other leagues, and we will do that right now. And as you can see here, we have an overview here over the international season 12, which is also a bit crazy in itself if you think about it. We did now go over 4 years back in time, and still at this point it was already the 12th season of the international championship, meaning it had already been running at least for 3 years. So definitely there's already a bit of history in the 3DHS tournament scene, which I think is very nice. And I think actually Payada did at some point write on Board Game Geek a post about the history of the International Championship and how it all started and stuff. I think maybe I will put a link to this Board Game Geek post into the description of the video, so if you are interested in a little bit of 3DH's history, then definitely check out this post. I hope I don't forget about it and put it into the description. And as you can see, I at this point played in the Master 2 group, and that was the first time where I really had struggled a little bit and met some very strong opponents. It was also a very close season, as you can see, only 5 points different, 5 points different between the first and fifth position. I at this point was very happy to stay in the league. As you can see, Payada was also playing in Master back then. Mushan was a player that played in Master, I think, for quite a long time. Shorty55 also played back then. For DireNTropy, this season didn't go ideally. I think the seasons before he had some very strong performances and just barely didn't manage to rank up to Grandmaster. After this season, I think he ended his career in the International Championship, but had still some very strong seasons ahead of him in the Intermezzo Championship before he decided to maybe play a little bit less 3Hs and only is at the moment playing in the Transcontinental ladder, but they are still on a very high level. So yeah, that was this group. Genghisip made it to Grandmaster, and I think relatively soon then also managed to win the Grandmaster division. This season was still won by Frotas, who at this period of time I think was maybe the most successful player, at least at this point. I think the overall most successful player was probably, I think his name is Leon C. I hope I'm not mistaken, who won 4 seasons very early when all of this tournament thing started. But Frotas, I think, has won 3 times the international championship in total and was at this time a very dominant player. We also see DJ Parson in the Grandmaster division. That was yeah, also very interesting because back then the replay feature didn't exist. So for me it was extremely helpful being able to watch some Grandmaster game, because DJ Parson recorded all of his turns turn by turn and then put them into one video, which was definitely a lot of effort. So definitely big thanks to him, because back then it was really amazing having the chance to take a look at the Grandmaster games, because without the replay feature that just otherwise wasn't possible, and I really learned a lot by taking a look at those games, and definitely was a lot more effort back then, because my first video on this channel, for those who maybe have taken a look at it, was actually also like this. I also recorded turn by turn, because for this season the replay feature didn't exist, but just after I've published my video and already did some plans about maybe doing 1 game per season, because it's just a lot of work. So again, big thanks to DJ Parson. It's definitely a lot of work that he put into those videos, more than I do with just taking a look at the replay feature. So I planned for maybe doing 1 game per season, but then the replay feature got revealed, and that just made it a lot easier to take a look at those games and analyzing them. Yeah, so that was happening back then. As you can see in Master 1, Irene had really an extremely strong season going up to Grandmaster, and he is of course still up to this day always in the at least top 3 of the clicker rating. Was very long for a very long time the #1 ranked player in the clicker rating. And yeah, also if we go a little bit down, we see some familiar names. Palino has won the Platinum Group 3 in the season. Sandvale was still playing at this point, who just made a bit of a comeback. If you don't know Sandvale, he was a very strong player, also played in the Grandmaster Division. He also recorded some videos, so if you want to see some old content, if you now have had fun taking a look at some Through the Ages history, I maybe can link you his channel if it still exists, also in the description of the video. So it will be a big description this time, but yeah, he also did some very interesting videos back then. So check them out if you want to. And also in gold, we see some very interesting names. We see that Marta Becher actually at this point won his gold group and also got into the higher divisions. We see Ipogi, we see PV4, who at this point was second in his gold group. Varzinets managing to clean sweep his gold 4 group at a time where clean sweeping wasn't even an official term yet. So yeah, he also has shown here his very strong performance. And yeah, if we go further down in silver, we see Pascalatopia, who also won the international championship not that long ago. And at this point, he managed to win his silver group. Mayondor, who just now managed to win the current international championship season. Congratulations to him. Was at this point in silver, finishing only second. So he also has improved since then by a lot. And yeah, so definitely interesting to take a look back at the time and see some familiar names, maybe also in the lower division who's just started playing and then maybe became a lot better or a lot more known in the future seasons with ranking up. Yeah, so I hope it was an interesting video for you. Let me know in the comment what you think of this video idea, or if you think it was maybe just a nice one-off thing, or if you're maybe interested in more of such videos. Maybe we can take even a step going even further back in time, maybe taking a look at the gold group where I played against Vlada, the game designer, or maybe going a little bit less back in time, at a time where maybe already won some major tournaments, and see if there are still a lot of differences to what I would do today. That could also be interesting, so let me know if you're interested in seeing something like this. And then, I can say thank you for watching, and then we will see you in the next video.